the ability to be in a leadership position is how you actually understand what is happening. You understand your team, the context, and you try to provide clarity. I think that's one of the things that I always look at is, sometimes there is about the grand vision, what we are aiming for, but every time we do that, we need to be very clear what they're going to do tomorrow.
Hello, everyone. The Shift Code explores leadership, transformation, building the future of business. And today, I'm very happy to have as a guest, Manuel Rios Krauss. He's the Chief Innovation and R&D Officer at Natura, which is a global pioneer, a Brazilian company in sustainable beauty. So Manuel had an incredible career. He studied, I think he's Argentinian. You're Argentinian, right, Manuel? Yeah, he studied at Unilever, which is basically aristocracy, when you're learning manufacturing, innovation, FMCG, marketing. And then he was also at one point a startup founder. He's now leading innovation at Natura. Natura is the first Brazilian company that became carbon neutral. It's a B Corp certified company. It partners deeply with community in the Amazonia, but we'll talk about all of that. So we're going to talk about how to scale sustainability, how we build innovative cultures, how we lead with purpose in a very fast-changing technological era. But Manuel, I'd like to start with leadership, your own life, your own career, how you develop these skills of leadership at the intersection of innovation and sustainability. So could you maybe start with telling us a little bit about a few key moments in your life, in your career, that actually shaped your personal leadership philosophy?
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And, I love PMI and what you stand for. So I think leadership is, it's a muscle at the end of the day. It's something you keep learning and keep building through time. I think what shaped, I started very early on in my career at Unilever. I worked in the factory, working, at the early stages of safety, health, and environment, night shifts. But I think what started building that is the vision of how you can actually engage with people, and how you can actually bring the best of people forward through clarity, through giving them a role to play, trusting and creating agency. And that had gone through my career, and had different leaders and mentors through time that I really admired. But I'm very much in the pace that is something that you keep building. And I had the luck of being in different kind of organizations, being an entrepreneur, being in the corporate world, and I think adaptability is the second element I had to incorporate in how to lead. Every time you have the ability to be in a leadership position is how you actually understand what is happening. You understand your team, the context, and you try to provide clarity. I think that's one of the things that I always look at is, sometimes there is about the grand vision, what we are aiming for, but every time we do that, we need to be very clear what they're going to do tomorrow. What's the next step? How their life is going to change. I think that's kind of the kind of things. And through purpose, I think I found one of the key North Stars of every journey. I hearing a podcast many years ago, those random things I hear, it's called Stay Tuned by the former ADA of New York, Preet Bharara. So very random, but praising someone, he said, I know this person stands for the right thing, the right way, for the right reasons. And that stuck with me. I think that's kind of a very clear way of executing everything, doing the right thing for the right reasons and in the right way.
Yeah, and so if you look back a little bit, and I'm sure you've had many situations in your life when sustainability goals and commercial pressure collide or contradict. So How do you actually make these decisions to go one way or another? Like, can you give us a few examples of situations where this happened to you? Because this is what many people tell me. I got those great ideas, those lofty goals, those dreams, but then we have the commercial pressure, right? So how do you decide when you have uh, to do trade-offs here?
So besides being a technical guy, I have been many years in pure marketing, brand development, etc. So I think there is a beautiful commonality between sustainability and brand building, which is endurance. How you create for the future. Commercial usually, and you're rightly so, because you need to deliver results, stay more in that short, medium term. But when you want to, incorporate this a long-term value in investing in sustainability, and creating a lasting brand is also a long-term investment. It's something that you build through time and through consistency. So every time I think what I had two different phases of my journey. I think the first one, it was a bit of, I think we did it wrong. So I think, first of all, there's an acknowledgement of, kind of the FMCG world saying, we're going to do sustainability, and is that's the right thing. And because it's the right thing, everyone's going to join us. But I think we didn't do it the right way. And we ended up creating an era of products that were very much more expensive without any reason, less efficacious, and sometimes a hassle to use. So I think that now that we have really incorporated this journey, is when I have to make a decision is this actually being done at the design stage? Are we thinking through how we are going to build long-term value for the brand in a sustainable way? And will we give the consumers or the end users of this experience an added benefit, superiority, something that they enjoy?
What you mean basically is that if you're looking at sustainability without the commercial imperative, then it's not going to work anyway in the first place.
If you use the couple, I think one at Unilever, while still Paul Polman was there, we had two strategies. For a long time, we had the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan, all the sustainability comments, etc. And then we had the Compass, that was the company strategy. And at some point, we decided, like, if we need to do our business and then offset it, or actually, work on our sustainability goal, it's not going to work. We actually talk to the work through our brands. So then those two things were connected. And from that point onwards, it was easier to say, this is a commercial gain. We grow, it's a competitive advantage if done correctly. And we need to think it that way. At the end of the day, and I always had this debate with different companies, the companies I worked or companies I partnered on. If you are going to really raise the bar to the maximum and you're going to be super ethical on how you do it, and then because of that, you lose commercial traction, your real impact in the planet is going to be very small. Yeah, you can be very, 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 very true to yourselves, but what you want to drive is impact. So what you need to do is, what is the best way to maximize the impact we have in the world?
Right. It's the same with project management, right? In the end, if you are making things more complicated, slower, more expensive, just because you're pursuing some sustainability goals, this is not going to work. You have to really think about, how do I, by being sustainable, actually, I manage my project better. I'm more efficient. I'm looking for more efficiency. I'm looking for a better return on my investment. I'm looking for more satisfaction of the stakeholders in the end. That's how you really embed sustainability in your projects, and you're more successful.
Exactly.
I'd like to shift a bit to scalability now. Like, see, if you think about scaling sustainability on a global level, first of all, I mentioned that Natura has been a pioneer in carbon neutrality. It's a B Corp certified company. It has all these partnerships with the Amazonian community. Can you tell us more about that? What do we actually do there? What does it actually really mean to scale sustainability in the way you do at Natura?
So, sustainability, and now the vision is around regeneration.
That's perfect. That's the regeneration is the heart of the P5 standards of PMI GPM, right? So this joint venture we have between PMI and the global, green product management.
So we are very much in the journey. The 2050 vision is about regenerating the planet. How we scale it is at the very center of our core. business. Very connected to what we were talking before. We said, there's a lovely anecdote of the founders of the company that they're still around and they're still part of our board. And they were telling like very, probably 20 years ago, the company was already getting some growth, and they went to talk with the R&D centers of the world, L'Oreal, Unilever, Estée Lauder, and say like, how can we do a partnership? We want to, have access to these crazy molecules you have to do beauty. And one of them told them, well, yeah, you probably don't need to do that. You're sitting in the middle of the Amazon. You may have a differentiation there already. And that was kind of the aha moment where they actually said, yeah, we're going to actually put that commitment to the Amazon rainforest as the center of how we do business. And now every product we have needs to have one of the bioactives we have developed. And there is a whole supply chain connected to the communities there. And this is, literally connected to what I was talking before. It's a hard task at R&D. Formulating some of those actives it's difficult. Yeah, it's much more easier with other actives, synthetics, or from the industry. But this, to make them stable, to make them smell good, etc. It's a complication. But it's part of the commitment, and it's our differentiation. And it's part. We already have identified 46 actives coming from the Amazon with independent supply chain, and this year we're going to finish with 50. We're actually we have a center of innovation in the middle of the Amazon. We are now opening a bigger lab there.
And how does it help you commercially? Like, to go back to the point we were making before, it's making your life more difficult, but how does it make it also better from a commercial standpoint?
Because no one has those actives. We have a really, really actual capture. We always said we have, a unique trifecta, which is we count with billions of years of evolution of nature, thousands of years of ancestral knowledge from the communities, and the latest biotech and extraction techniques to make the best of that. So we know all the typical ingredients that operate in the beauty industry. We have things that no one else have. So that is how our sensoriality in our products, the performance of our products is really superior, and that's how we build the journey.
Okay, that's really interesting. And so, is that recognized worldwide, or does it work mostly, let's say, in Brazil or Latin America?
I think that's a journey we're starting to walk now. We had that recognition last year. No, not even last year. This year at Cannes, we were recognized by Kantar as the most sustainable brand in the world. At the same time, we won the Lion Grand Prix on Sustainable Development Goals, because we have a project using AI and drones to identify the type of trees we have in the Amazon. So we have a global recognition. Our operations we have a bit of operations in France and the US, but it's mostly Latin America. My vision as a new joiner from the company is our commercial operations are yet in Latin America, but we have a global perspective, and we want to be an authority in bioactives globally, and we are very much building on that journey.
And you feel that the thousands of years of knowledge and how they use all the plants and active principles for cosmetic, for like curing themselves as well, is going to translate in a global narrative that works?
I think that's a great question, because we had not long ago very interesting debates. Are we about the Amazon rainforest, or is the Amazon rainforest our proof point? But there is a model that we can replicate, and I'm very much more leaning in the second bit. We have a model that we have made work in the Amazon as it is now, but there is a lot of other biodiverse spaces in the world that we want to protect. Our latest launch in fine fragrance, it's coming from a white rose that we identify a biotech way to capture the essence in Bulgaria. So we are now expanding that footprint into how we can get these technologies and get somewhere else.
Yeah, and the concept of indigenous populations, traditions that date back for thousands of years, you can find in many areas of the world.
Yeah.
Right? So you could replicate that concept, that marketing concept, and then of course the technology. Has probably some commonalities that you could leverage outside of at the Amazonia, I would assume.
Definitely, and when it comes to with nature in general and with sustainability, there is that risk. Like, although obviously there will be people that will connect with this concept, but sometimes someone in Europe won't connect as closely with the Amazon rainforest as someone in Brazil. But there are narratives, there are things that are closer to their hearts, connected with their culture. and there's ways that we can work around those narratives. I think there's when you think of L'Occitane, it's L'Occitane of Provence, except in Brazil, where you have the only country in the world where you have L'Occitane of Brazil as well. So I think there is always an opportunity to say, well, where we can tap into culture, understand where's the opportunity, and create something that is unique to connect better with consumers. So that's very much on the journey.
And if we think about the hardest barrier, again, when you want to scale on a global level, right? Is it a technology barrier? Is it a cost barrier? Is it a mindset barrier? Is it a cultural barrier? Or you feel it's just like there's no barrier, it's just that it's never been really tried?
Now we are starting to have a palette of technologies that are starting to build some momentum, but we will need to be patient. I think the scale up point is going to be critical. So it's not that it's never done before. I think what we need to have is really be clear on what are our big bets and what are our key experiments. I'm always play around the things. When we have something that we have decided this is going to, this is what we're going to work towards, this is going to put the resources behind. There's technologies, the bioactives we use, the refillables. There's things that are proven. We have the scale. It's just about decision to be consistent through time. There are other things that will need a bit of tender, and we will need to partner with people. There's a lot of partnerships and consortiums now happening that are pre-competitive, looking at different partnerships and different associations to actually sort out some of the things that we need to look at. So it's a bit of a balance, but technology now it's accelerating at a pace that was never seen before. So I think it's a bit of a play on where you build competitive advantage and you bet, where you build consortium and partnerships to actually scale some technologies, and then you build your own take on that. But it's a bit of a game where corporates and government and regulations needs to come together to make it happen.
That we're saying at PMI that there are three massive disruptions that are affecting a lot of things, and including, of course, investments in projects, infrastructures, and all the things that are important to us as a profession. The first one is climate change or climate emergency. The second is technology disruption and AI in particular. And the third one is the reconfiguration of global trade, the deglobalization or so-called deglobalization, or at least the instability in the way we used to do business. If we quickly cover those three for your business, for Natura, climate emergency, how does it affect your business? Like, for instance, all the things you're doing in the Amazonia, is it affected? How does it make you think? And then if you could cover AI, you briefly alluded to it, like how does it affect your business? And then finally, this reconfiguration of global trade, how does it affect you, your plans, your scaling of sustainability, your innovation, everything you do?
Well, big question. Climate change is changing internally and externally our business. So obviously we depend on crops in many of the things, and obviously changes on patterns, on rains, different seasons, and obviously getting into areas of deforestation affects dramatically what we want to protect. We work with communities trying this prize we got in Cannes was because we wanted to provide them information where they need to harvest the kind of ingredients we need, because if not, they will just for livelihoods, they will cut.
So you help them with your technology identify where they should invest themselves.
Exactly. So for them, in order to make a livelihood, they need to do whatever. And one option is just them go and cut trees. And when they get into the rainforest, they don't know where is the tucumã or where is the castaña that we need. So our system had mapped where they are. We provide the information, they harvest it, and then we buy it from them. And we have a commitment to buy everything they harvest, whether we need or not. So that's kind of part of that. But obviously those changes because the crop season is different, the rain season affects other things. But also that climate change that is affecting the way of our ingredients and many of the key raw materials we have had different inflation impacts. It's affecting beauty, which is the industry we operate as well, because now this heat, this extreme weather changes, the level of humidity, it changes how products are used. The level of adaptability of consumers needs to be different. So we need to also redesign how we do products in order to respond to that. So there is a very much supply chain everyday impact of that. And obviously, and we have, one full area of my team is working on eco-anxiety, and we have an well-being sciences, because we know that it also affects the consumers in different ways, and we have products that are working towards providing you well-being in that sense. So it's a multifaceted change that affects our supply chain, affects how our consumers feel, how our consumers interact with the industry, how they shop. So everything it's mainly changed through that. And obviously Brazil is at Latin America in general, it's a much more unstable region, so we suffer also those fluctuations in terms of currencies more than the rest. When it comes to AI, I think that's a universe. We could spend like 10 hours talking just about that. But what I would say is, first of all, from the R&D perspective, is just the speed of innovation we can achieve now. We are now talking about, we are partnering with companies in the synthetic biology space, where they just say, tell me the claim you want to say, and we can design a molecule that does that within
Oh,
months.
thanks to
Yeah,
AI.
yeah, because they kind of they what they call, when it comes to lab, we call the dry lab what happens in the computer, and the wet lab what happens in the bench. So the dry lab now can simulate what may take years now in days. So you can actually get very wild on that. But also in the consumer experience, as AI grows, the word of search is disappearing. The old concepts of CEO, etc.,
Absolutely.
doesn't exist anymore. So you need to, as a marketing organization, you need to train models to Natura. One of the core commitments on Natura is a commitment to the truth. And we know sometimes, the systems can be untruthful. So I think the decision is not to, stay away from it. Actually, it's further commits to it, to train those models to actually have the proper information, to tell the right stories. So I think that's kind of a huge implication in everything we do. The level of automation for many of the tasks that we in the past were required, that releases resources to much more higher value added tasks, etc. So AI, it's just a playfield that is beyond what we know.
And for the communities in Amazonia, for instance, like, is there a way to leverage AI to help them, or it's not relevant?
We're starting that. Obviously, that's kind of the level of interaction with technology varies by community. But this is a project that we did in the Amazon. It's based on AI. So this drone actually uses AI to identify from the canopies of the trees where are the trees located, and we pass that information to them. We're also harvesting data from them to understand what are the cycles of the crops, etc. So there is a lot of integration in that. But not. I think a couple of weeks ago I was with the head of foresight from IKEA. He was telling, whatever you think is the actual implementation speed of a disruptive technology is much faster than that. So it's going to happen much faster.
We're underestimating, even those of us who really believe in AI and really realize how incredibly transformative this is. We underestimate the speed at which things are going. It's too fast for us.
It's crazy. This guy was redesigning the house, and the architect said, you need to leave this space for all the robotic control of the house. It's not there yet, but it will be here in 2 years. So, the level of how this is integrated in everything is going to change dramatically, and I think we are not prepared for that.
And then finally, the
trade,
deglobalization. So trade, how does it affect
I
you?
think we're suffering sometimes in counterintuitive ways, because part of the competitive advantage of many Latin American countries was it was harder to do business there. So all the local companies had an advantage of that. So now, as we open much more, making more friendly for, the tariffs, etc., we see that. But I believe, in general, looking at the global landscape, we are seeing the emergence of I go back to the local companies, I go back to local sourcing, local supply chain. I think that demands a level of orchestration of we call it in Natura the business of combined businesses, that we will need to play much more articulated than we did in the past. The pure global companies are struggling to actually deploy the same strength that they had before. Consumers are less and less engaged with really trusting global organizations. and literally I'm saying I'm sitting in probably one of the most ethical and trusted companies in the world, but we're still a multinational. So in that sense, consumers are still hesitant on doing that. So the way of how you interact with the local communities, how you actually trade and are consistent with the values at a local level, it's something that is coming back in a much more stronger way. So yeah, it's affecting us. We have the luck as Natura that we're not suffering the main, we yet don't have a business in China, so we're not suffering that bit. But there's many things that can affect how we operate.
Okay. I like to shift to corporate culture, transformation, innovation. If we talk about culture, and you've worked with very large companies, smaller companies, now a very specialized company, what kind of culture do you think makes breakthrough innovation possible, especially in industries like beauty, right? So very fragmented product lines and a lot of innovation, a lot of stuff happening all the time. What is the culture that you need, and how do you nurture that?
I think, I not long ago I read this book called Loonshots, and they talk about that you need to have a dynamic equilibrium between crazy people and people that gets the business going, and both of them are very important, and both they need to coexist in creating.
When you lead big transformations in a company, what is the right pace, right? Because you said we need crazy people, we need to have very rational people. There's the right pace to find, right? If you want to go too fast, then nobody's going to follow you. Nobody will understand where you want to go. It's going to be a mess. If you're too slow, maybe you're missing many opportunities, and people will feel it's too slow, right? So how do you manage this balance, this difficult balance, equilibrium between too slow, too fast?
I always try to lean towards the fast side of things, and the control factor for the speed will be clarity. So it's how much clarity I can provide about the next steps. So, this is the transformation we're going to go through. Going back to what we talked at the beginning, is like how much I can give that commitment, that vision, where we are going to become. But how much clarity I have today, or what are the necessary changes we need to do today? That is the limiting factor that I always say. I need to have, obviously not always all the clarity, because that's slow, but enough clarity to be able to bring people forward, that they don't feel lost in the change, or they don't feel that the change is made by someone else. In order to make them part of that journey, I need to be able to say, we're going there. Your role is here. This is your agency for this journey. And the next step is this one. So tomorrow, on the next week, we're going to do these kind of things, and you need to start feeling that change in a way that is you can incorporate into your routine. If change is something that will happen and then you don't feel it in your everyday, it becomes something like it's a wild dream. And if it is too minimal that you also don't feel it because the change is almost nothing, then you don't drive that vision. So I'm leaning always towards speed, because at the end of the day, the market it's moving at a pace that you cannot just ask them to wait for you to get your things really arranged. But the only limiting factor is that if I cannot provide any clarity, then I need to rethink the kind of change I'm doing, or I need to think harder. But that would be the only thing that probably slows me down. But I'm trying. Usually, I think change for organizations is not evolutionary. You need to really make shifts quickly.
When you talk about clarity in what exactly?
Well, when how you do a bit that future back kind of thinking. Like, we're heading there. In order to get there, we need to you scale back, you engineer back that thinking, and tomorrow we all need to be doing this. And this is the tangible, clear change everyone needs to do in the next phase of the next 3 months for actually going towards that change.
So you're still a believer that it's not sufficient to provide clarity with the purpose and the end goal, right? You also need to give people a playbook of how to get there?
100%. I think that obviously if you don't have that purpose and that vision, no one will connect with that. It's a journey I don't want to even go through. I'm making too many references to books, but this is an old one called
No, it's good. It's good. We need to read.
it's called Switch. I think it's Dan Heath, and the whole model. It's about that analogy that between mind and emotions is a bit of a rider and a horse, and he says basically it's like a rider and an elephant. Once emotions have decide, it goes away. And then the model is you need to guide the rider. So that's the vision, that's the purpose. You need to motivate the elephant. That's kind of really giving the incentives to get the people forward. And the third point, which is what I'm talking about, and then you need to shape the path. What are the things that needs to happen? So for me, the playbook, I cannot think of any transformational change that had been effective without that playbook. Obviously, it doesn't need to be super prescriptive. It doesn't need to be top down. It can be co-created, but we need to know what is happening in the near term. If not, it feels too far away. It's when you have these lovely conversations about climate change 2050 and you don't know what to do tomorrow, it feels like you don't have an agency. So we need to bring it back.
Okay. All right. That's an interesting perspective. And I actually agree with this. I feel, however, that we're facing a time when enterprises need to be very agile. And so there's always the risk of being over prescriptive, and then the teams do not react by themselves when things happen, disruptions happen, and the unplanned happens, right? So that's a very difficult balance I find to.
Oh no, and that's a great point. It's a real tension because you by trying to provide that clarity, by trying to have those answers, sometimes you feel it becomes a bureaucracy and it becomes super slow. So it needs to, agility. It's one of the characteristics that those changes needs to have. I think that clarity, that kind of a bit of a guidance on what you are going to do next and how you feel it. I think that changes that you don't feel in your day-to-day job doesn't work. But obviously, I agree with you that if you don't have that agility, it ends up in the old corporate mandate of someone will tell me what to do.
Yeah, that's why, by the way, at PMI, we're currently working on this new manifesto for enterprise agility and try to find the right balance here. But it's going to be interesting to see what we come up with. I'd like to finish, Manuel, with your personal reflections, advice. You've gone from global corporations to co-founding a startup, back to a global corporation, maybe a little more regional, but still, like you said before, multinational. How does this shape you? Like, do you miss the startup world at the moment you work for a large company? Do you miss the large companies the moment you work for a startup? Or do you miss nothing and you love the fact that you go from one to another? And we have many young professionals listening to us. And, like you said before, large companies, large corporations have, to an extent, lost the trust of consumers, but it's also the same for employees, right? They feel more excited, maybe more motivated, more purpose in smaller companies. So what is the advice you give them? As you started many years at Unilever, and I'm sure you don't regret that.
No, not at all. I loved, I learned, I did this, an amazing journey. I think both words had amazing, characteristics that I would encourage. You find your way to experience them. It doesn't need to be you are in one world and then you step out into a different world. But there's ways of of either you're an entrepreneur really looking at how you articulate from the global perspective of a corporation, or if you are in a corporation, how to, feel like an entrepreneur. But what I would say is I love the step that where I'm now, because back in the corporate world, but I see things very differently. When I came back, I'm still a non-executive director of one of the startups, and that going back to our meetings there, it's always that going back to that reality check of frugality that a startup will have, that agility, decision making that you need to have, and when you have that experience, I think what I would say is consistency and big bets and bold movements works very much in the corporate world. When you go into startup, it's about pivoting. So it's about kind of the antithesis of consistency, but really finding what is the right way of iterating with the market and then finding your way. So I think that's kind of those behaviors, I would say, today in the corporate world, with the consumer context, with the market as it is today, with all the dynamics are happening, I would say the corporate world needs to incorporate much more of those entrepreneur tenets. And my recommendation to many of you is to look at these kind of characteristics of how a startup builds the product market fit, how startups look at the potential markets, how they actually the way a CEO in a startup is actually a hands-on of in many things, a very little management and a lot of doing, and how you can find your way of what are the things I'm doing. As you go up in the ladder and you start to be a manager of people, and that's a very important role in an organization, how you keep being a doer. What are the things you decide to intentionally be doing? Put your hands on. Have how I usually have a 40-40-20 kind of approach with my team, which is I do 40% of things, they do 40% of things, and there's 20 we collaborate. But always finding, everyone will find the right ratio for them, but always finding things that you can actually own, and you carry your risk, and you carry you put your personality into that.
Yeah, that's a very interesting and I think very important advice that you're giving, Manuel. I fully agree with that. Even when you're a CEO, you need to keep some things you actually do yourself. Whether it is working on the side to develop a client that nobody even knows that you're working on that, whether it is looking for people, partnerships, acquisitions, you do stuff you can't just manage. It's not going to work. And that's not about doing micromanagement. It is really a reality check and making sure you stay close to action and not just in an ivory tower.
Exactly. I fully agree with that. I think that's kind of the more you keep your feet close and your hands very active in things, the more you actually, on top of having that ability to keep doing things yourself, you become a better manager as well, because you understand the pressures of doing things, developing things,
Sure.
exposing things, receiving feedback, all of those things that we all go through. I think that exposes you to that gives you that vulnerability. I think that's great for leaders. But I think that's, the world now is full of opportunities to explore those two worlds. I recommend them very much on both. But now I'm in that stage of my journey where I would just trying to really go at the speed of a startup in a corporate company. I think I find better ways than what I was at Unilever. Yeah, I think that's kind of the journey I'm trying to go now. I will let you know very soon if I'm successful at it.
I'm sure it will be. Manuel, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you, a pleasure to learn from you. And we wish you all the best at Natura and all the best to Natura itself.
Thank you very much, Pierre. All the best for PMI. I think we will for sure stay close, and it was a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.